will sometime.
We're live.
What's that? It's a nice night.
We're reading it, yeah. But you should listen in. Yeah, you could be here to answer any questions.
I just wanted to.
Yeah, thanks. All right, we're going to give it one more minute. And we're going to roll here.
Second, younger Mario.
Scary.
He's a good guy.
What's he from?
Right, he did come here. What a good guy.
We're full audio. So, all right, guys, we're going to get started. I'm assuming it's all guys. There's no girls.
There may have been from India. I can't remember.
Did we just reduce the number?
I don't know. It's like it, yeah, it comes in.
Top. It's just on active camera.
Nice thing. Okay.
Change that to everyone.
Hey, click
Yeah,
on
we're
the,
26.
click on the people, number 26 up there.
Oh, so there is where you can.
You should be able to mute all.
Okay.
I couldn't.
Yeah, mute everybody.
Muted.
All right, so good morning. If you could just nod if you can hear me. All right, good. We've got everybody muted, so we'll unmute you at some point, but just to keep it the audio clean and we don't have feedback. So we're going to start out here. The purpose of this meeting is to review the AC50 SuperSet and hit a couple of other highlights with regard to the AC50. As everyone knows, the AC50 is now in full production. We've gone through a couple of releases, updates of firmware as we've used and critiqued the instrument, and we now have what I consider our final firmware. I say that, but there may be something at some point. The documentation also, we started out strong with, we're making some additional changes to the documentation to add some more details to the short form manual for the menus. I believe the best way to approach this instrument to start out is by pressing the buttons and not using the software. As all of you know, when you're on the plant floor, it's not easy always to connect a computer. It's always easy to press the button. So learn the button presses, use the documents on our website, and then the SuperSet program, which once you use the SuperSet, you're not likely to go back to the buttons. So Dave Wade is going to guide us through the SuperSet. And Dave Wade is the product manager along with Cam. Why don't you stick your head in there, Cam, since you're such a poser? Yeah. Cam and Dave are the two product managers for the AC50, along with most of the instrumentation, the Matrix, the 9000s, the Series 8s, AC20. We still have some inventory of the AC20, not much. It'll be a hard stop at some point switching over. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave, and then as we draw into it, we'll open up for questions, and we can bounce around on different topics at that point. So, assuming everybody can hear us, go ahead, Dave.
All right, thanks, Steve. And so, just wanted to go over. Obviously, everyone can see the screen, but we have two models of the AC50. Of course, we have the Modbus RTU, which is the 485 model, part number 31072. And we have the Modbus TCP, which is the 31070. And I just brought a case just so you can see here, mainly our instrumentation, as well as on the specific models. So this one is going to be what we're using today to do our training. And this one is the 31070. So with this model, they also have a micro USB on them. Both models have this. And this is for doing specifically updates to the instrumentation. The SuperSet software itself, hopefully you all received the link and you downloaded it.
Your camera's off, just so you know.
Oh, okay. Oh, understood. I didn't realize my camera's off. So when you open up SuperSet software, this is what you initially see. As you can see, it's not connected to anything, just a splash screen. So we'll select Carbon Controller, and I will go slow here because I think we had a slight delay. So
we had a slight delay?
yeah, I think. Well, I mean, when we started all this. and we'll select AC50 and AC50 here. So in this, we have an automatic to where we can select our protocol, whether we're connecting to one via Modbus RTU or Modbus TCP. And like I said, the model that we're using today is going to be Modbus TCP. We can start a scan. What I found with the software is we need to go in here and physically tell it what we're connecting to. Just by starting a scan, not knowing the IP address, I've not had luck with connecting to one just remotely. So in here, I can give it the IP address that I know is within my AC50 unit. And then this address range is looking for specifically, there's a serial address that's internal. So I'm going to go ahead and narrow that down to 2, and I can start a scan.
Hey Dave, what's the default IP address for the AC50?
When we send them out, it's the 0200. It's what we've been using. So here it's telling me, as you can see, it cannot find it. So I can switch over here to manual mode, make sure I have all my addresses and everything set correctly. I can also, I know you can't view this, but I can check my instrumentation and verify using the actual buttons on the face of the display. And it looks like this one we have set to 0200. So if that's been changed, I'm going to go ahead and select it this way, see if it finds it. So in this space, because of the network, there we are. So it's found it, and it's going to ask if I want to read all parameters from our target. I'm going to say yes. So it's going to pull from the AC50 I'm connected to all of my settings. I wonder if I can.
You said no.
Then it would just keep the connection. If I selected no, it would keep the connection, but it would not pull in the parameters from the instrument. So then my software wouldn't be updated to what currently is on the instrument. I'm going to zoom out a little bit here so we can get a better view. So now that it has pulled that information in, what I have is I have a button here which is called online mode, so that any changes that I make using SuperSet will be initiated on the instrument. If I didn't do that, then as I made changes, the changes would be made here within the software, but then I would have to write them down to the instrument. By using this online mode and selecting it, any changes I make, or I can look at the unit real time if I select my wizard here, and it will ask local parameters, meaning what is in the SuperSet software currently will be overwritten from the instrument, and I select yes. So the instrument we have now has a millivolt and a temperature being sourced in, so I can adjust my millivolt, and you can see here as I make adjustments down on millivolt, it's dropping, or if I increase my temperature on input 1, it increases. And it's calculating all of these percentages for us, these process variables. Selecting the red X will stop communications. By selecting back, I can also look at the settings via the wizard, and I'm going to update the local parameters here in SuperSet. So this is one way where we can go in and we can see our current settings or make changes to the AC50. Another method we can use is the parameter selection.
Dave, is typically how do you do it?
I typically use the parameter selection. What this will do is this will overwrite the local parameters here in SuperSet with the instruments settings, but as I expand this home column, what I can do is I can look, if I want to specifically work under my burn off setup, I can go here with this selection and I can see all of my values with descriptions. And I like doing it this way because it gives me the descriptions and what my current values are. So if I wanted to see anything with the inputs, I can see here how my input 1 is set up for my temperature, or I can see from my input 3 for my probe millivolts.
Dave, is IPA the register, Modbus register?
IPA is the register that's inside of the AC50, but it is not the Modbus register. What we would use is we would subtract 1 from this if we wanted to.
It's in the right side column next to description.
Yeah, we have it addressed here. We would subtract 1.
Should we, are we unmuted? Should we unmute here at this point?
We
You
can.
can, yeah, once you mute everybody.
Oh, I see, great, okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
So, but a lot of options that you have and a lot of changes that you may make, like if you want to adjust the user menu, you can adjust.
So when you
These
say
values.
user menu, you're talking about those that are under the function key?
Correct. As you press the function keys and it cycles through just that short menu option of what you can see as you press the functions, then these are what you'll see in this order.
So what I'd like to say, the function key was set up with the same format as the AC20, but we added a couple of things and we took a couple of things out, but it allows you to see the millivolts, the temperature. There's also an alarm clear. I think it's the second press where you can, if there's a probe diagnostic or probe burnout alarm, you can clear that off the function key, which is very important. It's easy to go in and clear that message. Then you can see probe temperature, probe resistance, response time, and burn off setup, just like the old AC20. But you can modify that menu with this software if you choose to. What you're seeing is what we ship as a default. Is that fair enough?
Correct. Yeah, this would be a default. So this instrument currently is set up for dew point. So this would be the default for dew point. That's why we have in this menu an H2 factor. So which an instrument when it's set up for carbon would not have the H2 factor, it would have the CO factor.
Right. And we used to show the alternative H2 for that CO, but it was meaningless in the AC20. So we removed that in the standard configuration.
Yeah.
But the point is, if you needed it, you wanted to still see it, you could add it back in.
Yeah. And by default, so as you cycle through these screens using the function button and you can change the display, we will have it time out and then return back to the main home display, which is showing your process variable, whatever you're calculating, if it's carbon or dew point. Specifically in the oxygen setup, we have it to where it will show you your parts per million or parts per billion and then go exponential. That we do not have to where it returns to the home display. You would actually press the function key or press and hold the automatic/manual button to get it to return to the home display. And the reason we had done that, Steve wanted that so that way you could either look at oxygen when it's showing a whole value, or you can view oxygen in parts per million, parts per billion.
So let me just speak to that. So the AC50 is expanded from the AC20 capability. 80% of what we do will be carbon and dew point, but it also does probe millivolt control, and then it does displays and alarms with percent oxygen and auto ranges to parts per million, parts per billion, and exponential. So automatically it's going to change scales as that millivoltage goes up. So a good example is if you're controlling a process for oxygen, you would always control in millivolt mode, but on the lower display, you would display the oxygen in percent, part per million, part per billion, and exponential. So it would show that auto scaling below the actual millivolts in the top display. So that's an application for oxygen that we previously didn't have with the AC20 that we would have used in 9120 that we can now do all in the AC50. It fits for the higher temperature applications. The low temperature applications, there's not necessarily the best solution because of impedances, but if you get into those applications, speak to me, to Bob, to Damien, to Dave Wade.
So one point that I wanted to go over was this legacy option that is down here towards the bottom. So these legacy parameters are what were pulled over from the AC20. So as you can see here, our input 3 are probe millivolts, carbon percentage. And like was stated, we have the default values and we have the addressing, but in this case, it's showing the IPA and you would just subtract. So subtract 1. So 123 IPA, that would be 122 that would have been Modbus register in the AC20.
So to that point, the AC50 can be put in series on RS45 RTU, and it will communicate as it did the AC20. So it's a direct replacement, providing all these parameters in Modbus RTU mode versus Ethernet. And it's important to note, and I think everybody knows, that you have to order it as either Ethernet or Modbus RTU. You can't order and change it after the fact. It's specific to that protocol when purchasing.
So you can view all of the registers or all the values. I mean, obviously, when we go through and check specifics, we would go to that specific location if we wanted to do anything with the atmosphere settings, the input settings, the digital outputs, relays, the analog outputs. To get back to where we were with the wizard, we can return to this screen. So, and I believe what a lot of people may be wanting to know is, so making a backup, something as simple as just, now we have a connection to this AC50 and we want to make a backup of how it's currently set or any changes that may be in. At this point, it's just simple. It's just selecting file and save, or save as, and then you can direct where you want to save your file and give it a name and select save. And this will be a .gfe file extension. And so when we return here, you can see we've now have a backup of that instrument.
How do we restore it?
So to restore, we can, or restore a different backup. Let's say that we wanted to put another backup file into this instrument. We wanted it to be carbon. We can select our file open. Now it's asking if we want to save the changes to this. Since we went ahead and saved it and gave it a name, it will default to that. I'm going to select no. I've already saved my backup, and then I'm going to go out and get a backup off of our network that I've got saved. So I'm just going to choose.
Before you do that.
Yeah.
So just to see here, these are all the backups, the standard configurations that we have. So we may have a standard configuration. If you're ordering multiple units, if you have a standard configuration, either that you have or you want to send to us, then we can load it and we'll keep it on file.
So we'll select the default carbon. It's going to then be opening that file. As you can see in the bottom right hand corner, it is currently connected. So what it will do is, seeing that it is connected, it will ask us and prompt here in a second whether we want to write these files. Now there's a communication error. This is good. And the reason this happened is because the communication that we have currently set with the instrument is not that backup file setting. So meaning that that backup file could have been set for, let's say, Modbus RTU, and we're using TCP currently. So it has gone to offline mode, and it's loading the backup into SuperSet software. So at this point, we're going to go ahead. We've got the backup that's loaded into SuperSet, but it is not in the instrument itself. So we have to change our target communication settings. And you can see here, so the backup was set from standard Modbus. We're going to now activate TCP, and then we're going to adjust those properties. We have to know what the IP address is. We're going to tell it the address, the serial address of the instrument. We're going to select OK. Now we're going back to target. We're going to go ahead and tell it to connect. Now it would ask us, do we want to write these parameters from the backup that we have loaded in SuperSet into the target? And we'll say yes. It will now begin the write down. So when you make a backup, not only does it back up obviously all the settings, but when you go to use that backup to make a connection, if you're connecting to a totally different AC50, you will have to make an adjustment. And that is the reason when you either go to switch from a backup to an active instrument or to close it down, it will continually prompt to keep asking you to make sure, do you want to save this backup? Do you want to save any changes? So currently it's completed, it's connected, as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner. The backup was loaded. And like I had said at the beginning of this, at this point, in order to see any changes that I make and that they are written down directly to the instrument, I'll turn on the online mode. So then if I want to go into the parameters and view them, I'm going to update the local parameters with what's in the instrument. And so before, our input could have been, this is set for K degrees F. Input 3 is our probe millivolts. We can look at our relay outputs, analog outputs, user menu. So our user menu previously was set for H2. You can see in this carbon, we're now using COF as one of the options under the function button. If I want to view current settings or how the instrument is actively, I'll pull that information in. And here's our calculations again. I can adjust my millivolts and adjust my temperature. You have the atmosphere setup options as well as probe setup.
Another comment I'd like to make, if you switch a unit, and these are experiences that we have, if you go from degrees Fahrenheit to degrees Celsius, there is a few settings you would have to change, like the low temperature cutoff or the calculation of carbon, which is set at 800 Fahrenheit. If you change to Celsius, then you're not going to calculate carbon unless you drop that 800 to the appropriate number, maybe 400. We just had that cost us an hour or two in the field a couple weeks ago.
So, and like Steve's alluding to, so if we go under the parameter setting and we want to change this specifically for our input and select our units to be Celsius. So here it's going to convert the parameters for us, which are nice. So it's switching everything over. So it's telling us all these values that have been switched. And you can see the values here, for example, like our input high limit. But when we go to our, let me find, looking specifically for the calculation, here we go. So minimum probe voltage for calculation. So here it would be minimum 900 and then maximum probe voltage. There's also as a temperature here. So it's telling us that this is 482. So with us doing this using SuperSet, all of these variables were adjusted. If you were to do this on the instrument itself, it doesn't go through and adjust all these variables for you. You would have to go in here and say, well, my minimum temperature now is based upon the different units, Celsius instead of Fahrenheit. And that's where we ran into a problem.
Changing it 2 degrees Celsius using buttons.
Mm-hmm.
Does that parameter conversion?
It did not do the parameter conversion. So Jim was actually in the field with that, and when he had made the change on the input, so they were keeping the same thermocouple type but using different units from Fahrenheit to Celsius, and that's where they were running into a problem, because then it wouldn't perform the burnout. It wasn't looking at the correct.
Wasn't calculating carbon.
Yeah, wasn't calculating correct. Yeah,
it's below the threshold.
And so it's same here. If we go into our wizard settings and we have our inputs, and we know that input 1, like the AC20 did, we have these numbers that are selecting what the input is. But when we choose to change that, if we make a different adjustment to a different thermocouple type, same thing here. It's going to try and update all these variables. So we've restored a backup. One of the nice features that I really like about SuperSet is that it also has to where we can make a comparison. So we have made a change in here. Specifically, we just made a change to the units. So if we use this parameters option and we come down to our compare parameters from the defaults, we can compare with another file. I'm going to select that file. And have it do a comparison. And since we're online mode, it should look at the instrument as well as the backup and tell us if there's any differences. So as you can see here, it's giving us all the differences that it's seeing. So from obviously multiple set point to specific alarms, to different values, custom linearizations.
There's a lot of non-necessary things here,
Yeah.
but you can look
The
for a
main
key
ones.
thing, which would be a thermocouple input or the units, carbon dew point, or an output configuration.
Yeah, our min and maxes here for temperature, burn-offs. So you can also print this or export this. I've tried both, and the export to recipe doesn't do anything for you, but the print is what I've used in order to print this screen off and have it set aside so that I can check those off as I go through and make sure that I'm verifying these settings or these changes. Another option or another feature that it is really useful, that I mean, not only just within the parameters and this comparison, you can do a read all or a write all, and this would be if you're not using your online mode. Those are really nice. The compare settings is a really good feature that I found that works quite well with using SuperSet. There is also an option here where you can view, there is a monitor window. So if you wanted to view or monitor a specific selection, let's say that you wanted to watch your burnout time using SuperSet, you can pull this value down here. So if anything is changing with the burn off or something's happening, you can view that. This is something that Liam showed us, Cameron and I. It's helped with trying to troubleshoot things if we're trying to get communications or we're seeing a register or something change that specific IPA. So, and this has been very helpful because I can watch that and monitor it while I'm making changes or while I'm doing anything with the instrument, expecting it to give me a result. So, and that's under this view monitor window. And you can use these options obviously as well as the buttons you have down here. So if we want to have the menu window or not have the menu window, there's everything that you can do within this window. It can be done up here. Adjusting your connection, disconnecting targets, reading your parameters.
Is there different languages, Dave?
Can you change the messages?
That's what I was going to say.
The messages, yes. I mean, so if the messages, we want to change the messages, you can do so. Well, the main messages here. So we're going to update. There's one or two of these that we've made adjustments to. So for example, we wouldn't load a dew point instrument with carbon deviation message. So, but these messages that it's showing 1 through 23 are, we've adjusted as need be a few of them, but the majority of them are just descriptions. And this is what will scroll across the display. So when one of these messages happens.
So if they want it in Spanish, they change those and it's in Spanish. They want
Yes.
French, they put it in
But they're fully editable right here.
Yes, you can edit it right here. These messages, as you can see, they're all numbered. So to know what they're going to affect.
Then they have to be Roman characters. They can't be Cyrillic or Chinese. Or
Yeah, I've never tried. Yeah, Cyrillic.
So the
something.
point that Dave touched on briefly is that when you go to, let's press the function key one time, it's going to display a value. If you wait a few seconds, you'll start seeing that message scrolling on the bottom. And then again, for whatever you press the function again, or wherever you are in the menu structure, those messages, appropriate messages, will scroll on the bottom.
Yeah. So as you can see here, we've selected the atmosphere set menu, and these are the messages that would happen based upon these actions. So if the millivolts were low, it would give message 15 if we want to know what that message is. And then this is what would scroll across the screen, too low millivolt to calculate. The logic function and math function blocks, we don't use those.
Currently, no.
No. I think that's mainly everything with SuperSet as far as making a backup or restoring a backup. Like I said, the biggest thing is each backup that you make, and like Steve had pointed out with the backups we have, each backup that you make, we've tried to make them uniquely, and for internationally, I've worked with Damien to make all the adjustments in specific backups for anything that is going international, but we've got quite a few different selections.
You show your just a little list of files. You got
Yeah,
in the
here.
directory. You show them.
Yeah, so here's all the different selections that we have, whether it's domestic or if it's going international.
Carbon dew point.
And if we're shipping England, we use the do not use folder.
Correct.
make it
This one
interesting.
here, yeah.
Just kidding. So can we jump over to the your document? Is it appropriate? Or do you have more you want to talk about here?
No, this is, I mean, that was good, I think, yeah, as
Yeah,
far as
and we're going to
covering
come
that.
back and open it up for questions. I'm sure there's going to be quite
Yeah.
a few, but just to
Did you
cover
want
everything we
to
want to
cover this one?
Yeah, let's go to that one first.
Okay, so the documents he's referring to, we put this together, which we can email this out. So we do have a standard USB to 45. But what this will allow is this will allow you to connect from your USB to the terminals on the back of the AC50 and to be able to write parameters down as well as
just to
back the instrument
clarify,
out.
you don't have the Ethernet version of the controller.
Yes.
This will allow you to have the communication to use SuperSet.
But
So-
not update firmware.
But you will not be able to use this to update firmware, correct? But using the terminals on the back of the AC50 and using this specific hardware, you would have to change internally in the instrument under the serial setup menu, the baud rate, make sure that the instrument's set for 115/200, as well as to make sure within your settings under your PC for that virtual drive that is created that you're set for 115/200 baud. And lastly, confirm that SuperSet software is using 115/200 baud rate as well.
So it won't work at any other baud rate because of some
It
timeout issues.
times
is our
out,
experience.
yes.
So 115/200 on both is
We've
important.
tried the slower 19200 and it just timed out. So and then the one thing that with the latest, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect from the instrument, not save changes. But with the latest revision of SuperSet software, if you're connecting manually, let's say you do have an older instrument for one reason or another, it was shipped out before the latest revision. Our current is 120, but you can then select if you want to connect with SuperSet. It will, if you select 120 and it sees that it is a 110 version, for example, it will adjust. SuperSet software will adjust itself, but it will also let you know if you're trying to load a backup in that was saved using 1.2, it will let you know that you're trying to load that into a 1.1 or a 1.0 or vice versa if you have a 1.1 trying to load that into a 1.2. But these version selections here, it always defaults to the latest revision of firmware.
Does the program show you what version of the firmware is in the AC?
You can see what version you're in. We'll get connected here to this instrument again.
Okay, there it is.
Yeah, so it'll show you not only here, you can also find it using the push buttons under the menu info and C, but it'll also show you here once it gets connected.
Now, if I try to write all and I'm going from a lower firmware to a newer, am I still going to get that error message?
Yeah, it'll let you know that they're not matching, kind of like Configurator does. It's going to say, hey, this isn't, if this doesn't match up, or it'll let you know.
We've got about 20 minutes left. We're going to keep this meeting to 1 hour. So once we get this, I'm going to
It does take a minute. There are a lot of settings that are in the AC50. So under our info, see, no. Where is our revision? There we go.
There it is, info.
Correct. And the instrument would be under info, but it's directly under the first selection here, software revision.
Okay.
So
can we jump to the, do you have the links for your videos?
Yeah, so we do have links that we created videos for. It should be in this document here. For just kind of assisting through, whether it's connecting using Ethernet, connecting using 45. In this video, we use the micro USB, loading a backup, or doing a software compare. So if we say jump to this video here, unfortunately, you'll have to hear my voice again, but here's the videos that we have out. But this video will go through and it will demonstrate using the software and making connections. Well, go ahead.
So the idea is that, you sat through this session today, but we do have these videos that can walk you through it again. And plus we're recording this video. So if you just want to figure out how to make a connection or load a backup, we have the videos for. What do we have the videos for right now?
So far we have them for, sorry, wrong document. So we have them connecting to the AC50 using Ethernet, connecting via micro USB. It's going to be the same with the USB to 45. It's just the only things they would have to do is make sure that the baud rate's set correctly. But loading a backup as well as doing a backup comparison. So those 4 videos we have created.
Just to kind of get you started, and then we'll add more videos when we have the opportunity.
Yeah,
and then enough to get you
on our
get you going.
videos site or on our YouTube site, those videos are there as well. As you can see them loading the backup, connecting with them.
Now, those YouTube websites aren't on our they're not on the main super system. So to communicate that out, we need to send an email to everybody.
Yeah, we would have to send the link,
Okay.
or they would have to be able to get to our YouTube site. But yeah, they're not on the actual videos selection within the Super Systems website currently.
Okay.
Okay.
Can be though. Yeah, we
can
can
be,
add
yes.
that. We'll add that to the AC50 on the videos on the. And everybody, I assume at this point, is familiar with the documentation for the AC50. When you go to controllers and atmosphere, you pick the AC50. There's the main manual, a short form manual, and then there's a wire cross guide. So I don't know if you can we pull that up from here?
Absolutely.
And then after this, we'll open up to some questions. That's it.
So under
Products, controllers, atmosphere, scroll down, AC50. So what we have right now under documentation is the quick guide, and the quick guide is going to be expanded. What we found is as we're using it and we're getting into the menu structure, you're kind of left without more details. So we're going to expand upon the. I'm sorry, I'm referring to the short form. Oh no, it is the quick guide.
yeah, those
Right.
these here.
So right here, we're going to expand on those menu pass 1, pass 2 on this guide. So once you go into like info Ethernet, it tells you what to do next. But this is helpful. And then also the intent here is just to get you going quickly. Also, you have the AC20 to AC50 conversion. And that allows you just to do a cross on wires if you're in the field, pulling an AC20 out and putting an AC50 in. And for those that are colorblind, there's a number to number cross. And then finally, the full manual, which is like any manual, somewhat overwhelming, but they're available to you.
And this is being updated as well. I spoke with Matt Spector, and we're seeing about doing a like an online manual. I know that that's something we've done recently, where it's more you click the section, takes you directly there, but being specific within things like, if you're adjusting inputs or things like that. But we've done that with some of our 9000, some of our other products as well.
Just on that screen, go back to that C in the top left, just as can be a point of confusion. That's for carbon, not degrees Celsius. And if it were dew point, it'd be D, correct?
Correct, a lowercase d.
That kind of caught me on.
Yeah.
When you were out there. So anyway.
And then the data sheet.
Right.
I mean, if anyone want to look overview the data sheet.
Sure. So let's see. Is anybody any specific questions? You want to go back to your video screen there and unmute? I think you can unmute yourself also. There you go. Click that again.
Everybody. Yeah, they have to unmute themselves.
You can unmute yourself if you have a specific question. Matt, you have to have a question.
I don't have a question, Steve.
Come
We
on.
will when we've used it more, I think. When we've connected this up and used it, I think that's when we'll start finding questions.
So yeah, when you have questions, Cam and Dave Wade would be the individuals to reach out to first, because they're the most knowledgeable with the product.
Yeah, I will say I know working with Brett, Matt, we've done some AC50s there where he had used remote set point. So there are some options and settings that you will need to adjust within the AC50 when we send them out. A lot of the settings that would have to be made via the SuperSet software are already set. So they're preset when the instrument goes out, but there are a couple of things that we have turned off to not cause any problems or cause confusion that would need to be changed. And that can be done using just the buttons locally at the instrument. But I know he has done one or two. We work together and we can do a remote set point as in the AC50 as well as a remote COF. So if you wanted to adjust the COF, you know, via analog input 2 with a 4 to 20 milliamp signal, or adjust the set point remotely using a 4 to 20 milliamp signal. We have some customers that did that with the AC20 and still like that feature with the AC50, so it's available.
Yeah, I think the experience has been pretty good, Dave. But that one you're talking about, we supplied an RS485 version to replace an AC20. But there was a comms issue with the RS485. I can't remember the actual issue. Do you remember, Craig? So we've had to supply an Ethernet now and hook it up via Ethernet, because they were drawing data from their SCADA system, which was one of their own. And there was one issue there. I can't remember what it was, but it may be a limitation, I thought, in the future.
Well, if you have the opportunity to use Ethernet, it's a lot easier to configure. It's a lot easier to connect versus 45.
Yeah.
And the only reason we have the 45 is for the legacy AC20. So any other questions?
How many sockets goes the AC50?
No, sorry, I was just, if you can hear me okay, I was just, what Matt was talking about is we had an RS485 unit going into an Ethernet modem. So it was a bit awkward, but we did eventually get it to at least read some back.
Okay.
Well, for everyone when you use the SuperSet program, don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll provide assistance. But please ping the videos first, if you don't mind, just to help you, and then let us know how else we can help.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. That was really informative.
Yeah, so there was a question asked here, if you do have an older version, you would have to have specifically the micro USB cable. It's a specific cable to do the update to an AC50. You cannot do it using the USB to 45 converter. So because the special cable plugs directly into it.
I mean, if it were me, I'd swap the instrument and
then
bring
we
it
can
back
update
to
it.
the bench and upgrade it, and then make it a consignment of some sort.
We've done that with our customer, like internationally, specifically, like Damien's had them return back instruments, and we've been able to swap them out, update them, back them up, and then restore them with the settings. So, and if you do use the AC50 Ethernet version, I will say, and we have it in the documentation, but if you change the IP address locally at the instrument, which you can do, you will need to cycle the power in order for that IP address change to take effect. So you'll change it at the instrument and it looks like it's adjusted, and then you may not be able to connect to it. Cycle power on the AC50, just off and back on, and then when it reboots, it applies that change.
But if you do it through SuperSet, you don't need to cycle power.
Through SuperSet, it actually has an additional tool if you install it. There is this tool that's up here, and it is, let me try and find it, services, thanks. Set this. We would have to select the correct connection. Here's the MAC address, and this is the one that we're connected to, and this is where then I could change the address and then apply my changes. Now, remember, once you apply these changes, what will happen is that you will lose communication. You'll have to then reconnect to the instrument. And same way, if you, let's say, for example, you're loading a backup of an AC50 using the USB to 45 converter. If your backup, let's say, his baud rate was set for 19.2, and you're communicating to the instrument using 115, as the backup is loading in, it will make that change, and then you will lose connection, and then you'll get continual prompt after prompt after prompt after prompt telling you this parameter can't be written, this parameter, because once that change was made, then what happened was it stopped the connection. That's why with inside of my folder here, if you look directly, I'll show quickly our configurations. We have these, but if I'm loading a configuration using that crossover, that different hardware, I load these. And it's because these backups were set with 115/200 baud rate. So if the backup was used as 19/200 and I started to load it, it would then stop communicating.
Oh, just lost our screen.
Hit the button again.
Actually, I think we're probably, okay, well, it's just this
There we
screen,
go.
right?
So
Any additional questions?
if you're running the problems or have questions, yeah, like Steve said, check the videos out, send us an email, let us know.
If anyone has other products, they feel that a 1 hour training session, and we're at 48 minutes right now, by the way, and we will keep it to less than an hour. We can continue to do this on other products. So please shoot an email, make a suggestion, and we'll make it happen.
Speaking of other products, will the SuperSet ever be used for the Matrix line?
No, configurator will always be used for the Matrix. One other comment.
Okay.
When you cross over from an AC20 to an AC50, you'll want to reduce your proportional band to 1/3. So if you have a proportional band of, let's say, 30, you'd want a PB of 10, correct?
Yeah.
For similar control. Of course, you'll need to tune it, but the PID algorithm is different, and you'll want 1/3 the value for the PB. The reset should be fine. You should not have any rate, but do reduce the proportional band. And that is documented on the conversion sheet along with the wiring. But really, just get your hands on it, start working with it, and then when you finally do an install, that's when you'll really learn it, as we all know. Thanks for everybody for attending. We had a really good turnout. Obviously, this is a good thing to do. We'll try to set up something again, maybe around some of the newer products coming out, around the Super Gen and the new flow meters later this year. But again, so if you have a product you'd like us to do a training on and existing, just send an email to Damien or I or Bob, and Jim, we'll get it going. Everybody have a great week, and for those of you in the U.S., have a great 4th of July.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, everyone.